I can call you, and on that note, as it is the last sitting day of the Dáil before it breaks for Christmas, I want to take the opportunity, Can Corley, to wish you and indeed all the members, the press, the staff here at the House of the Oireachtas a very happy Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Nála Conna agus Afi and Fi Washa Dave Gallier. And may I also, Can Corley, extend solidarity to the family of Private Sean Rooney of the 27th Infantry Battalion Dundalk, whose first anniversary takes place today, or Yeshe Garoa Anam. And I'm sure that everyone in the House will join with me in extending to the family our thoughts and prayers at this difficult time for them. Tánaiste Tá sé sáilear go bhfuil chip omlan fallacy and realtas ó hiútaíochta. Tín mis ón tuairisceil a fáilsiú inné go bhfuil chip a ríist an ceathrú bliain inné cheile an realtas na figurí bhí siad dréim leis a bhainte má hiútaí sóisialta a bhainte má níl siad fiú bhain abalta an tríú chuid sin a bhainte má am dhéanna agus tin seo inné blian ag chip na sprachan na seo a bhainte má. Tánaiste, yesterday evening, the Minister for Housing published the latest social and affordable housing report, and that report makes clear once again that your government will miss its targets for social and affordable homes. This year again, just like in 2020 and 21 and 22, you will miss these targets. Darragh O'Brien's housing plan, which is failing, promised to deliver 9,100 new build social homes this year. Now, how many has been delivered by the end of September? Less than a third of that target. Tánaiste, these homes are badly needed in every area across the state, in every community, for workers and families who are trapped in emergency homeless accommodation, for people languishing on lengthy council waiting lists, and for social housing. Your social housing targets are far too low, Tánaiste, and still you're failing to deliver on them. And as we know, the housing crisis isn't just an issue of supply. It's not just a problem in that area. It is also an affordability crisis, with an entire generation unable to find a home that they can afford. Last week I raised with you the report by the Society of Chartered Surveyors, which found that the cost of new build homes had gone through the roof. The average cost of a new build in Dublin, Kildare and Wicklow and Meath now stands at €461,000, an increase of €90,000 since your government took office just over 3 years ago, and well beyond the reach of the majority of people hoping to buy their first home. And it is the same across the state, Tánaiste, with new builds in the private sector becoming even more expensive and even less affordable for a generation of our people. And that's why yesterday's report on the delivery of your government's affordable housing schemes is so troubling. This year, the target for affordable homes through councils, approved housing bodies and the LDA was 3,500 homes. How many have you delivered by the end of September? 262. You reached 7% of your target, Tánaiste. That was too low in the first instance. On anybody's watch, this is a complete shambles. Not only are these targets too low, the Minister is simply incapable of delivering on them. On every metric, Tánaiste, the housing crisis is deepening under your watch, under your government. Rents are rising, house prices are rising, homelessness is rising, and the longer that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael remain in power, the worse our housing crisis is getting. Now, you tell us you're making an impact, but the only impact we're seeing is that you're putting affordable housing and affordable rents further from reach of ordinary workers and families. So, Tánaiste, I ask you, do you believe that your government will meet your social and affordable housing targets this year? Or do you accept what is now patently obvious to everybody, that you will not only meet these targets, but the targets are too low?
Deputy.
So,
time is up.
as the housing crisis deepens, what are you going to do to ensure that you do not continue to break the promises that you've made over and over again every single year, missing social and affordable targets in terms of housing?
Just before I begin, I would also like to take a moment to mark the first anniversary of the death of Private Sean Rooney. 1 year ago today, Sean was killed in the service of peace in southern Lebanon, and his life was one of full of courage, cut short in the noble pursuit of peace. And there is no more noble work than that of the peacekeeper. So everyone in the House, I think we join in expressing solidarity and sympathy with Sean's mother, Natasha, his fiancée, Holly, the Rooney and McCluskey families, and his colleagues and friends in the Defence Forces who mourn Sean's loss every day. I also want to take the opportunity, Ceann Comhairle, to thank you for your very fair-minded and warm chairmanship of proceedings throughout the year, and hope that you will get a well-deserved break, and to thank all of the staff in the houses of the Oireachtas. Our work would not be possible without them, and in particular I'm going to pay tribute to the Deputy Head Usher to get the opportunity, Head of Events Tom Hickey, who has worked here since 2001 and will retire at the end of the year. I wish him and his wife Lorraine the very many years of happiness in retirement, and to all of the staff in Leinster House, catering, cleaning staff, everyone who makes everything possible for us, have a good break and have a lovely Christmas. Deputy, in respect of the housing issue, government has been very clear that it is the key priority of government since we came into office. And by the end of this year, we will have built and completed over 100,000 homes by the end of this year since we came into office. And that's notwithstanding the shutdowns during COVID-19. It's interesting that this morning the SRI Economic Outlook, which we didn't quote for some reason, forecasts 32,400 housing completions in Ireland this year, which is a 10% increase over last year and the highest figure in 15 years or more. As you know, the overall housing target was 29,000. You also know that last year in Q4, 6,000 social homes came in completed, in addition to what was completed prior to that in the third quarter and fourth quarter. So quoting Q3 figures is not an accurate depiction of the reality and what will transpire at the end of the year. And the Minister and again, just to say to you, there is no doubt that the momentum in house building has been very significant over the last 2 years since we've come out of COVID. And by every measure of home permissions, of completions, of home purchases, first-time buyers, mortgage drawdowns, we're seeing very positive momentum. And the pipeline is very strong for next year. And the Minister for Housing is very confident that in respect of social homes, it'll be a record year in terms of not just build, but in terms of acquisition as well, and in terms of delivery of social homes, and in particular in terms of new builds as well. And also in respect of affordable, I think last year it was about 1,750 were completed. This year the Minister is confident that will be up to 4,000 will be completed. So the Q4 figures will be available in Q1 of next year. And it was interesting, this time last year, we had similar presentations from you and your party prior to Christmas. And when the actual figures were then produced, you just kind of glossed over them. The reality of what was completed last year, which exceeded last year's targets that were set in Housing for All. And this year, the targets, as I say, objective independent assessments from the SRI are saying we'll be at 32,500. The target was 29,000. And the pipeline for social housing is particularly strong.
Honestly, you're clearly not listening. I just made the point to you that you missed your target last year. You missed your target in social and affordable last year. You missed your target not only last year, but the year before. And you also missed it the year before. And you're going to miss them again. And the consequences of that are very real, because there is an affordability crisis out there. There are people now who can't get rental accommodation. Rents have now been at record levels. 12% increase in the last year. House prices still going through the roof. Emergency accommodation full with people who don't have a place to call home. 4,000 children. That's the consequences of you missing your drastically low targets in the first instance. Are you trying to present some type of illusion that you're hitting your targets in terms of social and affordable? Because you're not. So I ask you again, are you convinced that you will hit your targets for social affordable this year, which would be a break from what's happened for the last 3 years? Or do you accept what we can all see is patently evident, that you're going to miss your targets again this year, that your minister is incapable of delivering what is under the control of this government, which is building social, affordable and cost rental homes? That's the reality of your government, and I would urge you to wake up and look at what is happening right under your nose.
Deputy, 2022, which you haven't said, of course, in your presentation, saw the highest level of delivery of new build social housing since 1975. Over 10,000 homes were the social homes delivered last year, including 7,433 new build social homes. And that will happen again this year. And the pipeline, the strong pipeline of over 23,600, again, Deputy O'Brien doesn't want the truth to be told in the House. I'm heckling him through the chair. Always happens in here, week in, week out. When we want to put a few facts on the agenda, Deputy O'Brien and Deputy Darragh always seek to intervene. The bottom line is this: there's a pipeline of over 23,600 social homes, either on site or at design and tender stage. And the funding is in place to deliver over 11,600 social homes for 2024. 30,500 social homes have been added to the social housing stock. Up to Q3 20. I am answering the question. You don't like the answer. You do not like the answer. Including over 19,500.
If I might, this is strategic heckling. Please allow the Taoiseach to respond. And Deputy O'Brien, leaders' questions have got nothing to do with you. You have to wait until you're leader. Now,
and I just finally say, just to quote, if I could, an objective, the latest report from Euroconstruct, which is an independent construction market forecaster, notes that construction output in Ireland is forecast to grow at the strongest rate among 19 European countries, expanding by 3.2% this year, 4.4% in 2024.
But there's no point of order. There's no point of order. There's no point of order. Resume your seat. Resume your seat. Resume your seat, please. Good God. Do you know what? We have visitors in the House. Could we at least behave ourselves when there are visitors present? I want the members to join with me in extending a very warm welcome to Yelisa Meya, Her Excellency, the Ambassador of South Africa. And the Ambassador is leaving the service here in Ireland after years of sterling work on behalf of our country here in Ireland. We wish you all the best. Thank you. Deputy Holly Kearns, please.
And first of all, it's my last contribution in Leaders in 2023. I want to say a huge big thank you to all of the staff in Leinster House and a happy Christmas. Taoiseach, much has been made about the date of the upcoming referendums on care and the family. For some reason, the government decided to have them on International Women's Day. Is that because you think that women are excited about the prospect of a referendum on care? That will be celebrating if a sexist and legally powerless constitutional provision is replaced with a more progressive sounding but equally powerless amendment. Should that not be the bare minimum? Perhaps it makes sense in one way that these referendums will take place on International Women's Day, as it will continue a long-standing tradition of governments patronising women rather than listening to them. It's now 7 months since Marie O'Shea published her review on abortion services. The government reacted with barely disguised horror to that report because it was so clear and it was so straightforward in its findings. The current legislation is failing women in numerous ways. Among the recommendations she made were that the mandatory 3-day waiting period be removed, the threatened criminalisation of doctors ended, more clarity when it comes to providing abortion in cases of fatal fetal abnormality, and more of a balance between an individual's right to conscientious objection and a woman's right to healthcare. Taoiseach, these barriers to care are not just an inconvenience for women, they are a danger. Yet the government failed to act on the report's very clear proposals. Instead, you kicked it out to the Health Committee for a review. That review has now been completed, and the Health Committee is about to recommend that all of the legislative changes proposed in the report are implemented without delay. The question for the government now is, will you act on those recommendations or not? We all know that so many women are still faced with unimaginable pain every year when they receive a diagnosis of fetal abnormality and they're forced to travel abroad for care. The most recent tragic case of this nature was raised by Deputy Breed Smith in this House yesterday. These women are being failed by the state. Taoiseach, I know you said that you are not convinced that the 3-day waiting period is a barrier to women receiving abortion care. I wonder if you read Maria O'Shea's report when she detailed precisely how this completely arbitrary delay can time women out of care. The 3-day wait is not just a potential barrier to care, it is an insult to the intelligence and the autonomy of women all over the country.
Thank you, Deputy.
Are you aware of any similar legal impediment to or delay to somebody accessing healthcare that they want or are entitled to? Do you think people, when they're pregnant, are somehow more mentally frail or indecisive and therefore require a patronising provision? Taoiseach, if the government really wants to do something meaningful that would have an impact on International Women's Day, will you give a commitment to implement the recommendation of Maria O'Shea's report by then?
Yeah, first of all, I thank the Deputy for raising two issues, essentially the constitutional amendments and the issue in terms of the review of the operation of the Health Regulation of Termination of Pregnancy Act 2018. I just would say to the Deputy, you have a consistent pattern of endeavouring to characterise the government's position as a particular position or other, or that we're patronising women. And I would just say you're entitled to your perspectives and so on and your viewpoints, but so are people in the government house. And I don't think your characterisation of the government position is an accurate one. I would just have to put that on the record. The constitutional, the referendum, sorry, the amendments we've put forward have resulted, in terms of the amendments to the constitution that we're proposing for March the 8th, it took a lot of detailed work by the Cabinet Subcommittee and a lot of legal advice in respect of the optimal position, and also in respect of taking out language that was clearly anachronistic, outdated in respect of women, to modernise the constitution, to play constitutional catch-up, I think, as one minister has put it. And that's been debated around this House and committees for 20-odd years. It's not going to happen, and the government is going to deliver that. And there is a change in respect of care which has not been in the constitution before. Now, there is a legitimate discussion and debate, by the way, in terms of the separation of powers, as to how much we want it to be deliberated by the courts and how much to be deliberated by the executive and the Oireachtas. This is a very fundamental debate that shouldn't be sneered at or dismissed, because it's to the Oireachtas that has to allocate resources and prioritise the allocation of resources. And that is a consideration in terms of the ultimate formula or amendments that have been brought forward. Because ultimately, if you get the balance wrong, you cede all decision-making to the courts. And you denude Parliament and the executive of the day, whoever that executive is, of any capacity sometimes to target resources, to prioritise the allocation of resources, because resources are finite. That is perhaps for another day. In respect of the review of the operation of the health regulation, as you know, an operational group had been established, or was established as a consequence of that report, to progress the implementation of the operational recommendations, and a draft implementation action plan has been developed. That implementation group is a multidisciplinary, comprising healthcare professionals across the termination of pregnancy pathway and service users, and it is chaired by the National Women and Infants Health Programme. Significant progress is being made in respect of various recommendations in the report, and a significant number of additional sites have introduced termination services in the past months. Legislation providing for safe access zones has now passed all stages in Dáil Éireann and will now go before the Seanad. The proposals recommending legislative changes have been referred, as you say, to the Joint Committee on Health for consideration. We now have termination services in early pregnancy are currently provided in 17 of the 19 maternity hospitals. That's a significant addition to what was the case a year ago.
Deputy Kern.
Taoiseach, first of all, you don't need help from me for the government to be characterised as sometimes being paternalistic in its attitude towards women. There's evidence of that in multiple pieces of legislation. To name just a few, legislation around mother and baby homes, telling people that they're somehow unaffected because they spent less than 6 months in an institution. Legislation that tells women they have to wait 3 days to access healthcare, something we don't see in any other kind of healthcare provision. So it's not some kind of narrative that I'm setting about you. There's evidence of that. And here we go again. We're supposed to be celebrating because finally it's going to be removed from the Constitution that a woman's place is in the home in 2023. And you're doing it on International Women's Day, like it's some kind of huge gift to us. The Taoiseach previously stated that he would feel reluctant and uncomfortable to make changes to the repeal legislation. And I just have to say that I feel reluctant and uncomfortable at the prospect of healthcare decisions for women being informed by politicians' comfort levels rather than women's autonomous decision, expert advice or doctors' clinical judgment. The Taoiseach's reluctance to amend the law also flies in the face of the legislation itself. We said that we would review the legislation, and I think everybody can agree the idea that the review would inform how the legislation can improve. Will you take on the recommendations of Maria Shea's report?
Deputy Taoiseach, please.
Yeah, as I say, and as the Deputy confirmed herself, it was sent to the Oireachtas Committee on Health, and it has now completed its report. If we didn't send it to the Oireachtas Committee, I would respectfully suggest that you would be standing here this morning saying, why wasn't it referred to the Oireachtas Committee? And why should the Oireachtas Committee deal with it? We do have to follow up on that report now in terms of the review itself. And again, I'm very open to the recommendations to come from both the Oireachtas report, and government will give that very serious consideration. As I said before the House, my overriding concern is that the referendum that the people passed, and there was a set of criteria and conditions put before the people, both the referendum itself and the legislation, including the review. But we can't dismiss the fact that we put certain arguments before the people at a given time, not so long ago, and people voted on the basis of those arguments. I think that was the Taoiseach's point. It's a valid point. That said, the review was also contained within the Act. We've had the review now, and we will act on the review, and government will give that active consideration. But what I always wanted, I was very unhappy that maternity hospitals weren't providing services. But that to me was the first priority. There are two more that need to make sure that they fulfil their obligations under the Constitution and the law, and they will come on stream in 2024.
Deputy Peter Fitzpatrick now on behalf of the regional group.
Thank you very much, Ken Cawley. Ken Cawley, has been 1 year since the tragic death of Private Sean Mooney, member of the 27th Battalion in Darragh, and today our thoughts and prayers with his family and friends. Taoiseach, there seems to be more and more problems for cancer patients applying for the discretionary medical card. A discretionary medical card gives you the same services as a means tested medical card. However, a few of my constituents have not qualified for medical card based on means tests. Bearing in mind, if someone is self-employed, young, without private health insurance, not eligible for medical card, or doesn't have savings, they are left in a very vulnerable position of being unable to manage basic expenses such as heating and travelling to hospital for treatment. We are hearing from an increasing number of those people. It is only right that a discretionary medical card is granted to people who are over the financial means test. But what about those who are suffering from undue hardship? However, the issue is that the discretionary medical card application process is the same for means test medical cards, whereby you also must provide information about your family's medical expenses. My office regularly has constituents coming in with long-term illnesses who are struggling to get the services or medical they need. There are people coming into me whose lives have changed due to cancer diagnostics, who are connected that they may find themselves out of work due to the need for treatment. Many of these people are faced with a financial burden they cannot afford. At a time of utmost need, I have a constituent who is a cancer patient of very ill health, who knows they are over the means test, yet they've been sent around their houses to gather private pension information for a family member who has no interest in applying for a medical card. Why are we making it is significantly more difficult for cancer patients to be awarded discretionary medical cards on the grounds that the diagnosis caused undue financial hardship. This is not only causing undue stress on the patients, but it is doubling the work on the medical card approval section. Where is the efficiency, Taoiseach? It has been 10 years since the HSE has looked at medical card eligibility on the medical grounds and how effectively the system of assessment for discretionary medical card is working. Will you, Taoiseach, consider a review of the medical card eligibility and assessment and the process, especially for those on the medical conditions? Also, Taoiseach, it is crucial we review the recommendations from the 2014 report of the expert panel on medicine needs for medical card eligibility to see if those recommendations have been implemented and if they are working and they are fit for purpose in 2023 to 2024.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
I first of all want to thank the Deputy for raising this issue. I think it reflects the hard-working nature of the Deputy in terms of the cases that come to you via your constituency office and people you meet on a regular basis, and I respect that. More generally, I would make the point that there has been record investment in health since this government came into office, and that has focused a lot on reducing costs for patients generally. So we've removed inpatient hospital charges. We've had the biggest expansion of access to free GP care in the history of the state, including an expansion of free GP care to children aged under 8 and to people earning no more than the median household income. We've reduced the drug payment scheme costs. We've funded diagnostic scans for patients. We've agreed a new consultant contract. Approximately 1,000 consultants have already signed up, and so on. And in respect of medical card eligibility, there are about 1.6 million medical card holders now in the country, and over 623,000 GP visit card holders. Some 185,000 have access to discretionary medical cards, and in many cases these are people who have illnesses and who would not normally qualify because of the means test, but they do because of the nature of their conditions and illnesses. And people, as you say, who cannot, without undue hardship, arrange for the provision of medical services themselves and their dependents may be eligible for a medical card under this discretionary basis, which is determined then by the Health Service Executive. It's always been a long-standing position of both the Department of Health and HSE that health card or medical cards would be allocated on the basis of means test threshold as the fairest way, as opposed to condition-based mechanisms. But as you say, we have introduced discretion, particularly since March of 2021. Persons who have been certified by their treating consultant as having a prognosis of 24 months or less are now also awarded a medical card. That reflected a programme of government commitment to extend eligibility for medical cards to persons with a terminal illness. The expert panel on medical need and medical card eligibility that you referenced, in terms of whether it should be done on a particular disease or illness, that group concluded, and that was 2014, that it was not feasible, desirable, nor ethically justifiable to list medical conditions in priority order for medical card eligibility. And again, they stuck with the means test process. In that discretionary, where the HSE can operate its discretion, other costs or the costs of the illness can be taken into account in respect of enabling a person to be eligible for a medical card. Now, if the Deputy, and I know you might have a number of cases, but I would be interested in maybe getting an example of some of the cases so that we could reflect that.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Is there gaps in the system or in the situation that we have that could be remedied?
Deputy Fitzpatrick.
Taoiseach, the word cancer, it puts a fear into every household in the country. It changes people's lives. I guarantee you, Taoiseach, there's not one person in this house today who wouldn't have some kind of examples that I'm giving you today. I'm just going to say, as I said here, the bottom line is, if you're not working, you're not earning. I had a self-employed man come into me this week whose wife was diagnosed with cancer. He's self-employed and he has to stop working. First of all, the wife is in hospital getting the treatment. And it's simple wee things of getting children up in the morning, taking them to school, cooking the meals. They're trying to have their family as a normal family. All I'm asking you, it's been 10 years since the system has been looked at. And there'll be no better man than your good self, who was a former Minister for Health, to understand the situation is. We can all talk about money being spent and everything else, but there's a lot of hardship, a lot of suffering in normal families in the moment is. And Taoiseach, it's not fair. When you see a husband coming in your consistency office with his 3 children and his wife in hospital, it's wrong. When they have to chase around family members looking to fill in forms and everything else, it's absolutely dreadful. The last thing they want to be worrying about is who's going to pay the bills. And the city is, like just because you're working today and maybe earning good money, and something does happen, when you stop working, you stop earning. And Taoiseach, the doors that open with the medical card is unbelievable. So I'm just asking you today, it's 10 years since this was looked into. I'm asking you, can you give us a commitment today that you will try to help the hardship of these families that are suffering because one of them has a cancer condition? Thank you, Taoiseach.
Again, I thank the Deputy for raising the issues. Just make the point up, since 2015, medical cards are awarded without the need of a financial assessment to children under 18 years of age with a diagnosis of cancer. More broadly, the government took a position that where there was a terminal prognosis in terms of 24 months, the government decided to facilitate the granting of medical card in those situations, but not illness. In other words, it wasn't in relation to a specific illness. So, I mean, you have neurological disease, which could shorten a person's life significantly, heart disease, COPD, for example, stroke. So there's a whole range of conditions that essentially mean a person's life is terminal. And so the government has taken the view that, based on the diagnosis of any particular condition, if the prognosis is 24 months, the medical card will issue. And on a more general level, then, we've dramatically expanded medical card coverage to try and cover the situation that you've outlined, particularly in terms of the median income, which has been very significant expansion of the card. But again, I would be interested in hearing the details of some of the cases that you've identified.
Thank you very much. Deputy Michael Collins, on behalf of the Rural Independent Group.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I would like to start by wishing you, the staff here in the Dáil, including the guards, and all here in the Dáil, a very happy Christmas. Taoiseach, are you aware of the many crises that are hitting farmers recently? I will start with knackeries. This week, Taoiseach, where there is a strike ongoing, leaving dead animals with the knackeries in this country, leaving dead animals on the ground of farms for days, open to dogs and vermin attack, as well as the stress of mental health of a farmer and their families having to endure this smell and visual for days. The renderers have had a massive increased charge put on them and no longer find it viable to collect fallen animals. Minister McConnell has stated that acquiring a burial licence for dead animals comes with strict environmental conditions. But I ask, where's the environmental concerns to have a dead animal in farmers' yards for days on end? It is shocking, but everyone seems to be standing back and not creating a solution. I move on, Taoiseach, to the ICBF, who at the stroke of a pin overnight wiped out farmers' incomes of up to 44%, costing these mainly suckler farmers tens of thousands of euros by undervaluing their bulls. Farmers who were doing everything by the ICBF book for 10 years were met with an overnight change that destroys their farm practices and their income. Also, in the past 2 weeks, Taoiseach, many farmers have been told that their farm payments under Acre Scheme will not be paid to them, like promised in November, December. This means 27,000 farmers, 60%, will not get their payments now, but maybe in February or later. This is a payment out time for farmers who promised co-ops, contractors, others they would have the money to pay the bills, and now they can't. Not that they won't, simply they can't. Look at the nitrates crisis that farmers have been plunged into. Thousands of farmers are going to have to cull cattle in the new year to comply with these extreme guidelines. I have spoken to these farmers who are pleading for some short-term movement with the department, as they were misled, they feel, with the senior politicians visiting parts of West Cork, giving hope of some movement that never materialised. And if this movement is not forthcoming, why not a compensation package for these losses incurred by these farmers early next year? And if this is not enough of a hammer blow by this government on agriculture, the new sneaky VAT reclaim changes will put any future new or existing farm building projects in doubt, Taoiseach. This inability of unregistered farmers to draw back VAT on certain farm equipment, which they could until recently, is the difference on many farm projects going ahead or not. This is nothing but a direct attack on the future investment in farms. In my own constituency clinic in Clonakilty last Saturday, a farmer who had his full plans, a young farmer, who had his full plans on building a new round milking parlour, feed bins, bulk tanks, plus further works, which was going to cost him, Taoiseach, $360,000, with 82,800 of this in VAT, which he was able to reclaim before this, but now cannot reclaim. This has left the whole of this farm investment project paused. Taoiseach, what would you say to this young farmer? Do you honestly accept that this is an effort by government to shut down good farm practices? And if I am wrong, how do you see a solution to these 5 issues?
Taoiseach. First of all, I want to thank the Deputy for raising multiple issues in the overall umbrella of farming and agriculture. And could I say that the fundamental objective of government is to protect farm family incomes. The most effective mechanism to do that is through the Common Agricultural Policy, and we did negotiate a Common Agricultural Policy for the period 2023 to 2027, which with a strong focus on supporting family farms regardless of size or location. And we are looking at close to €10 billion in total between EU and Exchequer funding, will support over 120,000 farm families under the new cap. 50% increase in Pillar 2, Deputy, in rural development funding compared to the last cap, and a 5-fold increase in support for organic farmers, specific supports for women farmers for the first time. And in the first year of the new cap, some €1.2 billion has been paid to farmers. And payments will continue to issue to farmers this month across a number of schemes. Could I just say, you raised knackeries and fallen animals and so forth, and again, you referenced, I think you were implying perhaps that the environmental standards were too high. You might clarify that. We need to be cautious there, Deputy. I think we have to have strong environmental standards in terms of the disposal of animals. And that's in these days we can't play fast and loose. We can't play fast and loose with that. So I didn't quite get the context that you were referencing that, but you might clarify that. And in respect of the meeting in West Cork, I think you referred to me going down there. Your reply, was it? You said senior politician. I know you weren't there, but you said a senior meeting. I was there. Deputy Christopher Sullivan facilitated it, and actually, it was a very constructive meeting. We actually went to see how farmers in the Timoleague, Kilbrittain area were dealing with a research project with Talgask in respect of water quality. We spent a good 3 hours there, and it was informative, insightful. But the bottom line in the discussion afterwards: how do we avoid losing the derogation or going below 220? There was a lot of realism actually at that meeting. A lot of people realised the reality of the situation. But what was critical is that nationally we take every effort, working with the farming community to make sure we don't go below the 220 limit, and that we retain that at the time of the next review. And I think that is important, that we work collectively and in partnership with the farming community to achieve that. On the acres scheme, you do know, Deputy, that initially was planned to take in applicants in 2 tranches, with 30,000 in tranche 1. But the government made a decision to accept all valid applications submitted last year. There are up to 46,000 farmers actively in the scheme, if not more. But that has created pressure on the department in respect of the payments. And the department officials are working flat out now to get advance payments to acres farmers commencing on the 18th of December. And up to 992 acres participants in County Cork will be included in that. So everything has been done to pay as soon as possible all acres participants who clear prepayment checks. I think it's a good sign that there was such high demand for the acre scheme. It shows that farmers believe it's worthwhile, it's impactful, and it's proved very popular. And I think we took the right decision to expand it and to include as many farmers as we possibly could.
Deputy Collins.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your response, Taoiseach. But I do need to explain to you, in relation to the knackeries, The dead animals are on the ground, so it's no point talking about strict environmental rules. Sadly, they are fallen animals that have died over the last 2 weeks. And there's a dispute ongoing there that the Minister hasn't personally intervened, which he has to personally intervene. It's the stress, it's the environmental fallout from having a fallen animal on the ground. I'm listening to your response, and I don't think you realise the crises that are going on with these farmers. I've just mentioned 5 of them, and I don't see any solution. The knackery issue with the dead animals stays unresolved. Farmers losing 44% of their income due to the ICBF's incompetence still remains unresolved. Farmers' payments on the acre scheme, you said some are getting paid. Most won't get paid until February. There's a rumour it might be March or April for some of them. That's a hammer blow to some farmers. Movement with the nitrates stuck in farmers. You might have gone down, but you'd want to go back down now and meet the farmers at Timoleague and Kilburton and Barryroe, because there's a fury there, an absolute fury that there's no movement, and there hasn't been no chance of a compensation package at least for the beginning of this year, if not any other time. And tarnish the VAT penalty against the farmers, which you didn't use, which didn't speak about, which will stop any future investment to farms needs urgent action. Can you answer what is going to happen here with these critical issues, Deputy, as farmers are furious on your inaction that is putting their livelihoods at risk?
Time is up, please.
Well, Deputy, that in respect to the VAT issue, I did say you raised a multiplicity of issues. The farm organisations are being invited in to meet the revenue commissioners and the Department of Finance to discuss the VAT issue next week. That is happening. The department works with the farming organisations and work with farmers on these issues. And the department is also working to resolve the issue in respect of the knackery situation and the fallen animals and the issues that have arisen. And I would be confident that they can get a working resolution of that issue for farmers more generally. I mean, our whole approach is to get payments to farmers, to facilitate. That's why we've allocated the resources. We're not out to get anybody or undermine anybody, Deputy. And the acres, I think, has been a very successful initiative. The evidence of that is by the number of people who have actually applied. And I've no doubt that the department will do everything it possibly can. The extra numbers were significant. It was originally planned for 30,000. There's 46 to 50,000 now involved.
Thank you.
That, by definition,
increases
the pressure on the department.
That concludes leaders' questions for today and indeed for 2023. And